In the year 2018, me and 3 other friends decided to travel to Bali for about a week since it was cheap and we had time, so why not? We were all males in our early 20s. It was honestly quite a surreal experience. The country is absolutely beautiful, and the food was amazing. The only issue I had about the trip were the locals. Drugs were really prominent there, especially mushrooms. The streets were filled with druggies, dying to sell us their drugs. I am not exaggerating when I say this. One dude even grabbed my arm because I ignored his 2-for-1 deal for a one-way trip to meet Jesus. I shrugged him off, while my friends laughed it off, suggesting that I may be passing up a chance to meet our Lord and Savior. However, that is only the tip of the iceberg. The horror started when we went back to our Airbnb for the night. We had an early day the next morning, and were exhausted. This place was extremely cheap, and it didn't even have a proper locking mechanism for the door. I had 2 wooden doors which swung inwards, and the only way to lock them was to wedge a wooden block through the holes mounted on the door. It was quite a primitive lock, but it gets the job done, I guess. Everything was going well until the last night of our trip when we realized that the wooden block was missing. We looked everywhere for it, but to no avail. I just figured that one of us must have misplaced it somewhere. We settled for using a selfie stick instead, since we didn't have anything that fits the holes to wedge the door close. I know, it sounds like a horrible idea. We turned in for the night, seemingly not expecting anything since we had already stayed there for 6 days with no issues. I woke up to strange clicking sounds in the dead of night. I got out of my bed, thought maybe it was one of the guys. So, I nonchalantly approached the noise. Then I noticed my friends were all sleeping. So I decided to investigate the cause of the noise. The ruckus seemed to be coming from the door. So I headed towards the door, feeling extremely confused. Who could be at our doorstep at this time of night? I noticed the doors were slightly opened, and the selfie stick was horribly deformed. I peeked outside and saw 3 people staring through the gap between the doors. They were really close to the entrance and were attempting to push the doors open. I yelled at them, questioning their intentions as I noticed one of them was holding the wooden block. I was shocked and puzzled at the situation as I recognized one of the men. He did the overall cleaning for the Airbnbs and pathways during the day, so there was no reason for him to be there at 3 a.m. The other dude asked if the wooden block belonged to us, as they allegedly found it outside of our Airbnb. I definitely smelled bullshit, as there was absolutely no reason to do that at 3 a.m. I called for my friends and the 3 men immediately ran for it. I clued in the guys on the circumstances, and we stayed up until morning came in case they tried anything funny. We decided to report to the reception about their employee, but the description I gave them were not synonymous with theirs. They told me their housekeepers they hired consists of only females in their late 30s and 40s. This sent shivers down our spines as we came to realize that we had let a complete imposter in and out of our rooms while we were out. Luckily, nothing important was lost and we got out of the situation safely. I can't imagine what would happen if I hadn't woken up on that fateful night as the doors were close to being opened. I was just grateful that it was our last night there. I'm a 20-year-old language student from UK, currently doing my year abroad in Toulouse in the south of France. My unsettling Airbnb experience unfolded a couple of months ago when we took a trip around the south to my friend Maxine's hometown, Giuna. There are lots of beautiful little villages scattered around this part of the countryside, which are very peaceful and calm, and the people are pleasant. This is not an area that tourists typically visit. You find that the locals are often bemused to find a foreign person in this part of the country. Not too far from Juna, there is a slightly larger village called Eugenie-les-Bains. I may sound like a broken record here, but this is another very stunning part of the country that probably not many people know about besides the locals. In the town, there is a Michelin-starred restaurant, and we decided to pay a visit here for my boyfriend Ethan's birthday, his 23rd to be exact. As it was now 2 years since we had met, it was nearly our second anniversary too. He had taken time off work to come to France to visit me, and we were glad to be spending some time together again finally. We booked a table for 4 at the restaurant: Ethan, Maxine, her boyfriend Leo, and me. Initially, we wanted to book into the restaurant's hotel as well. However, it was too expensive for students like us. So, we booked into an Airbnb instead on the outskirts of town. We enjoyed a lovely meal and then sat outside drinking wine and smoking cigarettes in true French fashion. We then went for a late-night stroll through the town, enjoying the quaint little frog statues situated within the town. After we got too tired, we decided to head back to our Airbnb and rest for the night before we would head off to our next destination. We eventually made it back to the room and had another glass of wine and a couple more cigarettes before we headed off to bed around 1 a.m. I woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of something scratching by the window. I wondered if it could have been a dog or perhaps another small animal like a cat. However, the sounds faded away almost as quickly as they appeared, and I quickly drifted back off to sleep. Not long after, I was awoken again, not because of any sound from outside this time, but because Ethan had gotten up for the bathroom. I lay back down on the pillow and closed my eyes. But then, a sudden sense of dread filled me up. I don't know how, but I had a feeling that somebody was watching me. I looked around the room, with only the moonlight bringing in just enough light to see. I looked over to the window, which should have been closed via the shutter, but again, Ethan, not being used to the life around here, had forgotten to lock it. I could see it slowly being pulled open by a hand outside, its silhouette lit by the moonlight, attempting to open the window while holding something that I couldn't quite make out. I then heard what sounded like an old-fashioned camera shutter closing repeatedly. I hadn't heard one of these in many years, not since my grandfather would take family photos of us. But as I've heard this so many times before, it was unmistakable to me what the sound was. What felt like an eternity passed by before I could bring myself to open my mouth and yell out to Ethan. The person at the window quickly began to climb down, and while briefly in the moonlight, I caught a clear glimpse of a very distinctive ring on the left hand. I didn't get a long look at it, but it did appear to be wooden, with a distinct marking on the side. Seconds later, the assailant was gone. Ethan rushed outside to try and see who it was, but all he saw was an empty street and could hear the sound of footsteps becoming more and more distant. We didn't sleep a wink the rest of the night. Neither of us dared to. We checked out of the room as early as we could once there was sunlight. Maxine and Leo went to get the car while Ethan and I returned the keys to the lockbox. I messaged the host about what happened, and while he seemed sympathetic, he said he wouldn't be taking any action against what happened. A few days have passed, and we still have no idea who tried to break in. Ethan thinks it was the host as they weren't too apologetic. However, Maxine says it's because they're rich snobs and don't care about foreigners. So, we'll likely never figure out who it was. The creepiest thing for me is that some pervert has a photo of me lying nude in bed, and I have absolutely no idea who has it and whether or not it might end up online somewhere. I stayed at a lovely Airbnb in Iowa for my little brother's graduation. He didn't know I was going to make it, so we threw a surprise party at the Airbnb. While we were setting up, my other brother and I went down to the basement to get an extra table. The second we got down there, we looked at each other and said, "Yep, it's scary here." We searched for the table. The longer I spent in the basement, the greater the feeling of dread grew in me. We found the extra table and headed back upstairs, joking about how creepy a seemingly normal basement was. My whole family got together, and the party started. While we were celebrating, my girlfriend decided she'd run the washer, which was downstairs. She was going to go down alone when she came back up and asked me to go with her, since it was creepy. Again, I went down and rushed to leave. The basement was now officially scary to me. The party continued and we had a wonderful time. As the night started to settle, people got in their Ubers back to their hotels, and now it was just me and my girlfriend, unwinding after an afternoon of eating and drinking. We were relaxing when the laundry buzzer went off. I looked at her, and she said she didn't pick up the load from earlier. I thought it was strange that it hadn't beeped hours ago. We headed down to the basement. Again, she stopped at the stairs to the basement and asked me to go first. As I was going down, the buzzer on the washer went off again, scaring us. We both jumped. I hurried down, grabbed the laundry, and we headed upstairs to let it air dry. As we finished, I could tell she was still nervous, so we decided to go through the house and lock all the windows and doors. My girlfriend stayed beside me this whole time. We finally had one last door, the door to the back garden right outside the kitchen and at the top of the basement. I went and locked the door, ignoring the sense of dread I felt with my back turned to the basement. I should mention this was an oldish house, so the stairs were steep and the bedroom where we slept was probably originally an attic. In order to turn on the lights upstairs, you had to flip a switch at the bottom of the stairs. As we made our way in the dimly lit house to the light switch, I think our sense of tiredness overcame the dread we had. I flipped on the switch and headed for the stairs. Just as I did, I heard a loud sound, like the sound of pots or something metallic clanging. My girlfriend's face was full of fear, and I'm sure mine was too. I began to go for the kitchen where there was a knife, but then I heard the whacking again at the top of the stairs. I turned to look against the now illuminated attic and saw a ceiling fan turned on to its max setting and its mounting pole making the sound. I ran upstairs and turned off the fan, my girlfriend close behind me. Even though I was totally freaked out, I kept my cool, as I didn't want my girlfriend to panic. So we got ready for bed. I headed downstairs to turn off the light switch and looked outside the window of the attic to check on my car out front. Everything was good. We began to fall asleep. It was a restless night, hot and stuffy. I had dreams of seeing a shadowy figure out on the lawn. Woke up the next morning feeling like I'd been running a marathon. I dragged myself down to the kitchen, aiming for that first cup of coffee. I was just about to get the brew going when I found my eyes drifting over to that damn basement staircase again. There was something off, something I couldn't quite put my finger on, but it was like the basement was calling me or something. I found myself descending into its gloom, my eyes darting around, expecting I don't know what. But there was nothing out of the ordinary. Feeling a little foolish, I went back upstairs. We had breakfast, packed our bags, and got ready to go. As we were doing one last sweep, I checked the kitchen one more time to make sure everything was in good shape. Just as I was about to say, "All good, let's go," that freaky laundry machine buzzed. Both me and my girlfriend were just like, "Nope," and ran to get out. As we were leaving in a rush, I grabbed the bags and told my girlfriend to start the car. Just then, the fan upstairs turned on again and began making the whacking noise. I've never bolted so fast out of a house. As I dashed to the car, I must have been a spectacle because my girlfriend took one look at me and knew something was up. "What happened?" she asked, her voice trembling just a bit. "The fan," I blurted out. "It turned on by itself, again." I practically yanked her out of the driver's seat, took the wheel, and we hightailed it out of there. Needed someplace neutral, someplace normal, to make sense of it all. I shot a text to the Airbnb host about the haunted washer and possessed ceiling fan that refused to be tamed. He answered quickly, and the abruptness of his words sent a cold thrill of unease through me. "Thank you for staying with us,"